Which is, how did you study for legal studies?
Okay, I did this for all my subjects, by the way. It's quite a strange way of studying. My friends would tell me my mirror still has spit marks on it from where I would practice. But basically what I would do is I would put my notes together, not too long, but just a good, really effective summary of the course content. Because with legal studies, like business studies and some of the histories and humanities subjects, there's a lot of content. With this subject in particular, which I understand they're changing for future syllabi. So it was a heavy content, so I would do an effective set of notes. But then from that point, what I would basically do is just talk myself through my notes. So start with the first dot point, pretend to explain it to the mirror if mum was around or my sister was around, try and explain it to them. They didn't really stay and listen much, so it really left with me in the mirror. But that's what I would do, and I would find that explaining the links, you would just cement it into your brain, you'd really ferment that sort of understanding, and then writing it down in the exam. It was good because it lent itself to mastering the content. So rather than just trying to memorise things by rote, which is really boring, I would have this really good understanding of what the key themes and ideas and how they worked with each other went, and being in a paper, getting any question, you could adapt your knowledge, and I found it to be really effective.
All right, excellent. So, quick sort of overview, you made notes as a starting point, and then you basically sort of taught other people or yourself via a mirror.
Basically, yeah, the more you could talk about it, I found the better I understood the content.
And so, just taking a quick sort of step back, when it came to making notes, you did say that it was sort of quite an effective sort of summary of the content.
Yeah, and
why did you do that?
What I mean by that is, I think the biggest problem when people take notes is they try and know everything, and their notes merely become an extension of the textbook, whereas I was quite judicious in what I chose to put in my notes, to the point where some people would look and say, well, you ignored this, this and this, because the fact of the matter is you've got a limited amount of time. And I think where procrastination is concerned, it probably comes out in note taking, when people are trying to note everything, and you go back and you do the old I've got 70 pages of notes here, I'll just flick through them and yep, I know it all. So it's not really studying at all. Whereas if you have I think from memory about 15 pages for the courses broken down into 4 sections. I had about 15 pages each, and that was something you could 2 days easily get through everything and really sink your teeth into all the content. I found that to be quite effective. But again, it's really just a case of, okay, I have an hour to note this section of the chapter, let me break it down. Okay, this is the most important section, I'll give this the most weight, and try and make the notes as concise as possible. And with a subject like legal studies, where you need to have lots of examples, I found a lot of my friends and a lot of people who still did well, but admittedly not as well, that they would just have heaps and heaps of examples of acts and legislation to memorise, case law, and I tried to focus on examples that you could use for a variety of topics. So maybe pick a general case that had a lot in it, and then really learn that case inside out and use it again and again and again, because there's nothing stopping you from using one case as an example in one essay in the paper and then using it again in another example. So I'll give you an example off the top of my head. If you're doing an essay on criminal law, you talk about domestic violence, and if you're doing an essay on family law as well, you can use the same examples from. It's sort of double dipping, but it's a more efficient way of studying.
And so,
does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, And just again, getting a little more clarification. So, I know one of the big issues students do have, you hit it right on the head, is that they replicate a textbook in their notes.
Yeah.
How did you work out what to sort of take down? And how did you work, what were the most important things that you should keep in your notes and what not to keep?
Okay, admittedly Mum wasn't too happy because I couldn't sell my textbooks afterwards because there was just heaps of annotations on them. So I would go through and basically read the chapter first, get a bird's eye view of everything that was in there, and then make notes in the margin, an asterisk here, that's important, get that down. And after, I think, reading through something, you tend to be able to sort out what's worth remembering and what's not. So it was reading through, whereas I think a lot of people just start, okay, first paragraph, make notes here, and then they get to like the 5th page and realise, oh, that stuff back there probably wasn't that important. I've wasted time doing that. Admittedly, this is something that I didn't work out overnight. It was a lot of practice, and I remember my notes for ancient history being as long as the textbook, which is about 110 pages, and I realised this probably isn't sustainable doing this throughout my HSC year. So that was how you did.
So basically, bird's eye view,
and then narrow it down, and then go back at the end and just delete things you don't think are important, especially with coming up to exams. trials in particular, where you don't really have that much time, it's unrealistic to expect that you can revise everything. So to be able to go back and effectively pare back your notes and make them as concise as possible, I found to be. And as you're doing that, you're reading through them as well, so you're soaking up a bit more.
Yeah. Now I know with legal studies, there's a lot of facts to remember. There's a lot of cases, legislation. How did you actually go about remembering a lot of that? Was it simple rote learning?
No, not so much rote learning, saying it aloud, talking about it. Some of it was rote learning, like you'll come across that concept you just find really difficult to remember, or in law, some of the Latin phrases really difficult to say, so that was a case of rote learning. I wouldn't overdo it though, because as you can imagine, rote learning is quite boring. I don't think you'd find anyone, even someone who did quite well in the HSC, who actually enjoyed doing rote learning. And the negative side of that is if you try to rote learn everything, if you just keep on rewriting your notes the same thing again and again and again, chances are you might remember it, but there's also the chance that you'll just get bored and give up after the first or the fifth page of writing something down 100 times. Sorry, coming back to your question, what was it again? It was how did I...
Well, it was how did you sort of identify from a text the key things to write down in your notes? So you said essentially
follow the syllabus.
Yeah, and
I wouldn't go beyond the syllabus, because at the end of the day that's what they examine you on. There's no point in... It's always good to have one or two key examples that can differentiate your response. In terms of the actually going beyond the syllabus and trying to find stuff that isn't there related to legal studies probably isn't worth your time, considering there's a lot there anyway that you need to cover. But really it's just a case of breaking it down. Don't do it all in one hit, because as you can imagine with content subjects, if you try to do it 3 days before the exam, you're kidding yourself. It's just a case of really getting this. What I would do is I would print off the syllabus. I just do lines. Okay, this section I'll do this week, this section I'll do next week, this section I'll do.
So you did it as a continuous process.
Exactly. And then on Fridays I would go back. I'm talking about in the immediate period before the HSC here. On Fridays I would just go back and have a flick through what I'd revised that week, and it was just a way of cementing it. And if there was anything I felt particularly uneasy about, the week of the exam I would go back and revise the stuff I thought I was bad at.
Yeah, okay.